Soviet offensive was advancing rapidly toward the west, and the mission of the German commander in charge of the defenses was simple only on paper: keep the access routes to Minsk open long enough for the Fourth Army to escape an imminent encirclement. In reality, the situation was desperate. From the northeast approached the 5th Guards Tank Army, with more than 200 armored vehicles. From the east came the 2nd Guards Tank Corps, and from the south, the Soviet 65th Army pressed forward. The improvised combat group, the Kampftruppe, formed in haste under his command, would be outnumbered by a minimum ratio of 10-1. The problem, however, was not the equipment. The 5th Panzer Division was at an unusually high level of strength for the stage of the war in mid-1944. Its armored complement was almost complete, something rare among German units at that time. The Panthers had one of the best cannons anywhere on the Eastern Front. The Tigers, with their 88mm guns, were capable of destroying any Soviet armored vehicle at distances from which they were practically immune to enemy fire. The crews were composed of veterans, many of them survivors of Kursk, where they had fought the previous year. But even so, the numbers were relentless. The Soviet industrial output produced more tanks in a single month than Germany could manufacture in 6. The Soviets could absorb losses that would completely destroy any German formation. The Wehrmacht's military doctrine favored mobile defense, preserving units for localized counterattacks and avoiding committing entire forces to static positions. Hitler, however, had ordered Minsk to become a Fester Platz, a fortress to be defended at all costs. The Fourth Army, with around 150,000 men, had been instructed to hold its position east of the city, even though it had already been overrun on both flanks. The commander knew that arithmetic was against him. His Kampftruppe might win hours, perhaps a couple of days, but it was not capable of stopping the Soviet offensive. He was experienced. He had already commanded the 4th Panzer Division, fought at Kursk, and taken part in the defensive battles around Gomel. He had been wounded twice and decorated with the Knight's Cross, with oak leaves and swords, earning a reputation as one of the most competent armored commanders on the Eastern Front. By late June 1944, he was serving as acting commander of the 3rd Panzer Corps when Army Group Center collapsed. The corps had practically ceased to exist under the pressure of Soviet forces, and 2 successive corps commanders had been killed. He was given the order to gather whatever troops remained and form a Kampftruppe capable of defending Minsk long enough to allow other units to withdraw. He received command of the 5th Panzer Division, elements of the 170th Infantry Division, the 505th Heavy Tank Battalion, plus rear area security units and soldiers dispersed from shattered formations. The situation of Army Group Center at the end of June 1944 was catastrophic. Operation Bagration, the Great Soviet Summer Offensive, had begun on June 23, with devastating bombardments along a 500-kilometer front. Within 72 hours, the German 9th Army was encircled at Bobruisk. The 53rd Corps of the 3rd Panzer Army was annihilated at Vitebsk, and the 4th Army was being crushed between converging Soviet armored columns. German commanders had underestimated the strength of the Soviets, convinced that the main attack would come farther south. Hitler rejected all requests for tactical withdrawal. Units ordered to maintain fortified positions were simply bypassed and destroyed. By June 27, Army Group Center had already lost 25 divisions. Around 300,000 soldiers were dead, missing, or about to be encircled. The Soviet plan was simple and brilliant. The 1st Belarusian Front would advance from the south toward the northwest, while the 3rd Belarusian Front attacked from the northeast. The 2 pincer movements would meet west of Minsk, trapping everything to the east. Soviet mobile units were advancing nearly 50 kilometers per day. German forces retreated in disorder, abandoning equipment, damaged vehicles, and wounded soldiers. The roads to Minsk were packed with refugees and military columns. Soviet air dominance was absolute. Aircraft attacked German formations at will. The Luftwaffe, exhausted, had fewer than 100 operational aircraft in the entire sector. The commander positioned his troops on June 28 to cover the main highways and railways leading to Minsk. The tank regiments of the 5th Panzer Division took positions near Borisov, along the main Moscow-Minsk road. The Panthers were placed in the front line. The Panzer IVs, about 2 kilometers behind. The Tigers of the 505th Heavy Battalion were deployed near the important rail junction to the east, covering the lines used for evacuation. The infantry of the 170th Division held the highway, forming a rear guard through which units of the Fourth Army could retreat. The plan was simple: trade space for time, keep escape routes open, and inflict as many losses as possible on the pursuing Soviet forces. However, the commander knew that Kampfrupp had been placed in a sacrificial position. Soviet numerical superiority was immense. Intelligence reports indicated the approach of at least 20 tank brigades. The Fifth Guards Army alone had more armored vehicles than all German forces in the sector combined. Even if every German tank destroyed 3 Soviet ones before being lost, an unlikely scenario, the Soviets would still advance. The real objective was delay, time buying, not stopping the enemy. On June 29th, the Soviets reached Borisov. Reconnaissance elements of the Fifth Guards Army probed German positions, identifying weak spots. German artillery opened fire on approaching columns. Soviet aircraft bombed the bridges over the Berezina River, attempting to cut off withdrawals. During the night of June 30th, German engineers destroyed the bridges, but before dawn, Soviet engineers had already built temporary ones. By sunrise on July 1st, large Soviet armored units were already crossing the Berezina. The main battle began at 8 o'clock on July 1st. 3 Soviet tank brigades advanced along a 6-kilometer front, with more than 150 armored vehicles supported by infantry, artillery, and ground attack aircraft. They advanced directly down the highway toward the Panther positions. German artillery opened fire at the very limit of effective range, around 1,400 meters. T-34s moved forward in mass, and the Panthers destroyed them as they appeared, with almost surgical precision. Burning Soviet tanks began to block the road. Soviet crews abandoned disabled vehicles. The German crews fired as quickly as possible, with experienced loaders maintaining an impressive pace.